Most people, when they are confronted with a problem or a challenge in their life, almost treat it like a slight, as if life is unfair, whatever happening is unfair, and they've just been dealt a bad hand. But what if I told you that these problems, challenges, or we could call them tests, were not here to screw you over, and that believing that they are screwing you over only creates more problems? And what if I was to tell you that also, if you were to embrace these challenges, instead of bemoaning them or resisting them, your life would begin to transform in ways you cannot even begin to imagine? Well, that's exactly what happens. So many people victimize themselves when certain things happen in their lives, and this completely cuts them off from their ability to create. What it actually does is it causes them to create more of the same in their lives. In this case, more problems. So in this video, I want to help you not fall into this trap, or to stop falling into it if you notice you are already. Because complaining about your current circumstances really is the glue that keeps you stuck to them. And so if you want to move into new circumstances, create new circumstances, you really gotta stop complaining. So I will be going over the real reasons why negativity is most likely showing up in your life, what you can do when it does so you don't get hooked, and how you can embrace the bends so that you are able to create the life you want for yourself. So I want to go over a framework that is incredibly powerful called the To Me, By Me, Through Me framework. And this will hopefully show you why, if you're going to complain and victimize or whatever else it is in your life, it's only going to make things worse. You see, there are different states of consciousness that we can be in. And the one I'm going to recommend or invite you to really move towards, and what this whole channel is kind of about helping you do is move towards this, is the one called Through Me. But to me essentially is life happens to me. This is the victim. This is the person who feels victimized by life and is always complaining. They always feel hard done by when it comes to life. They treat every obstacle or challenge that comes up as a slight. Everything that could potentially be an opportunity, they treat as something that's trying to screw them over. This is to me, life happens to me. Now, by me is an upgrade from to me, because by me is life happens by me. The difference between to me and by me a lot of the time is by me starts taking action. Now, they might have a pretty negative mindset when it comes to life, like life is suffering and unfair, so I gotta make it happen or whatever else it is. But now they're moving and they're getting things done, and more things are able to come about. But again, this leads to burnout and a bunch of other negative things. So there is an upgraded place from here as well. And this is through me. This is life happens through me. And this means you are cooperating and co-creating with God, the universe, the field, the greater consciousness system, whatever you want to call it. You are now in rhythm with life. You are on the same frequency, and you are allowing things to come through and move from that place that helps create so much more in your life. When you are in through me, you are at the pinnacle and peak of your reality creation abilities. When you are in to me and by me, you cut yourself off the further down you go. So in to me is when you're the least powerful, by me you're starting to gain a little bit more, and through me is when you're really beginning to realize your abilities. And again, this channel, pretty much every video I create is to help you to start taking the steps down through me so you can get more into the rhythm, the natural rhythm of life, of God, of the universe, or whatever label you want to use. Now, if you are into me, there's no two ways about it. You can't do that. When you are in to me, you cannot consciously create. You can unconsciously create from a negative place, which creates more negativity, but you're never going to be able to shift your life or create reality, your reality in the ways that you want if you are in this to me mode of being. And so it can be very useful to identify what place am I in general, and also in different areas of my life. And by doing that, you can make the unconscious conscious and actually start to work towards moving into through me in each of these areas. Now, I want to go over next that there are actually two ways typically that negativity can show up in your life. And I'm going to play you a clip essentially where I go over what these two ways are. Now, it's important to know which is which, because then you can better address whichever one it is. Because one, if you try and address one the way you would the other, you're going to get all tangled up. And so I'm going to play the clip which will explain what these two different types of negativity are. And I'm going to say quote unquote negativity, because it never really is negativity or chaos like people label it. It's actually for your benefit. And then we're going to go over how we can use this feedback for your benefit to help you create more of the life you want. So first things first is that there are quote unquote typically two ways in which things can go wrong. Now there is the first way, which I'll describe briefly, and then the second way, which is what we're going to be learning how to overcome or move through more in this video. Now the first way is you are just sending out a negative vibration most of the time. This means that you're entertaining negative emotions most of the time, you're lower on the consciousness scale as far as where you live most of the time, your thoughts are mainly negative. So if you're in this kind of stage, or you see someone in this kind of stage, well, of course you're going to draw back, things that you don't want. You're going to have things come in that match the vibration that you are sending out. Like the quotes say, you get what you think about most of the time. You get what you feel about most of the time. And so if you're thinking negatively, if you are feeling negatively most of the time, life is going to continue to bring things that are going to cause you to continue feeling that way. So that's not what we're mainly talking about in this video, although I have other videos that can certainly help you with this if it is something you are going through. But we're going to be talking about the second type of way that things can go wrong. And in this second way, you actually will find that you've been doing a lot of positive things. Let's say you've been focusing on what you want. You've actually been taking steps forward towards your goals. Maybe you've been doing a really good job of thinking correctly or positively, feeling really good now, keeping up with really good habits that build certain things in your life. Let's say you've been doing that for even like a few weeks, maybe even a few months. And then for whatever reason, some things start to come up. Some chaos starts to come up. A storm in your life starts to come up. And you wonder to yourself, how come this is happening? I thought if I thought positively, I thought if I thought about what I want, I thought if I felt good most of the time, I thought if I stayed in alignment and followed that most of the time, then things wouldn't go wrong. It would just be more and more positive things coming through. I thought if I took inspired action, good things would come into my life. Now, I will explain in a second why it is this seemingly wrong thing, this thing that you don't want, will come up, and it can come up in many different forms. It can come up in you've been doing the work and then suddenly you lose your job, or someone close in your life maybe leaves your life or doesn't want to be your friend anymore, a relationship, etc., etc. Maybe you lose a little bit of money or something else, some kind of thing that you would not deem as necessarily positive happens even though you've been staying true to these new habits, this new way of thinking, of focusing on what you want, etc. But ultimately, what we want to do is learn how to embrace this chaos, to weather the storm and stay grounded. And that is when this new level of things will start to come into your life. This is when the 2.0 you will start to be there. This is when you start becoming who you need to become. It is on the other side of that storm. But what most people do is they do this stuff for a little bit, they're thinking positively, they're getting motivated, inspired, they're taking the inspired actions, they're doing all the stuff we listed before. They're taking those steps forward, and then the chaos starts coming up. Those same people get scared, they get frightened, and then they take a step back and they go back into the old habits and behaviors and everything else. They go back down into that more negative spiral that they're trying to transcend because this storm is here. And the negativity, for the most part, has been their comfort zone. So they might even go back into a similar job. They get into another relationship that's kind of the same thing, maybe just a different person, or they go back to a relationship they don't really want, but they make it work, for example. And this is what commonly people do. And a lot of people can be on this seesaw or this perpetual loop where they're doing this all the time and not really making much progress because they take some steps forward, feel pretty good, but the chaos comes up and then they step back into the old life. And then they're feeling pretty bad. They don't like that. So they start taking steps forward again, but then back again. And so we ultimately want to get out of this loop. Why does this storm come up? Why is this happening? And there's usually a few very simple explanations. And one of the main ones I like to tell people, because it usually is the reason, is that life is simply clearing out things that no longer will resonate at this new place you're going to. So you lose a job? Yes, because that job is not going to support you in this new place you're now going to be if you weather that storm. You lose a relationship? Yes, because unfortunately that person's not going to match where you're going. And if you don't leave the relationship or it doesn't end, you'll stay in place. Oh, you've lost some money? Yeah, that's the same thing because there needs to be something that comes through from that that you would then, where you need to actually lose that money. Maybe you need to see yourself as so abundant even when you're losing some on the outside, right? All of these things have a purpose to see almost if you're ready for that next level. So it will start clearing out things at the old level, the old identity, to make room for the new. But ultimately, it is embracing this bend in the river, embracing this chaos, that's going to get you to that next level. But this is one of the main reasons. It is clearing something out to make room for the new. Now, you can kind of think of this like a grade system. I'm not saying it is, but it's a good analogy, a good comparison to really help connect the dots here so this is more understandable. You can think of it like when you're in second grade, you won't move on to third grade until you pass the tests or the challenges that second grade presents. You will be held back indefinitely until you pass those tests. And in a sense, life is very much the same. You can't hope to go around the bend in the river until you pass the tests, the challenges, or whatever else is in the arena that is meant for you at the grade you're in to help you in the next one, right? When you graduate second grade, you're more prepared for third grade, but until you are prepared, you're not going to move up that grade. And so the challenges, the obstacles, the things that come up in your life are not redundant. They are there to help show you something, help you build the muscle, or give you something that you are going to need as you keep moving along the grades. So if you get something, for example, on third grade that you're supposed to go through, it's most likely going to assist you, give you some level of awareness or something else that will help you in the next grade. Now, the thing about this, when it comes to life and the reality you're creating in the grade you're in, so to speak, the level of awareness you're in, it can take as long or as short as you allow it to take. You can spend an entire life in what we could call the equivalent of first grade and never move up to second. Or you could move up the grades incredibly quickly because you're embracing the bends, you're seeing the challenges, the opportunities, the problems, quote unquote, for what they really are, just feedback. And this allows you to embrace the bends, to embrace the chaos much more easily, and then for a new level of coherence to show up on the other side. And again, if you treat every so-called problem as a challenge, a situation, or an opportunity, rather than a problem or something that's trying to screw you over, you're going to move up the grade system quickly because you're going to approach every single thing that comes up with a much healthier mindset, which is going to cause you to respond in a completely different way, embrace these lessons, see what it is you need to see that this is trying to show you, which then gives you that access to higher levels in the game. So just keep it in mind that these things showing up are almost never redundant. I can't really think of a time when they are, and to just see them as feedback instead of emotionally responding to them in a way that keeps them perpetuating in your life or repeating in your life. It is something in the arena that you need to confront, to do, to see, to become aware of, that is only there to help you or to serve you as you keep moving forward. Now, another principle that's really going to help you to gain a grasp of this, or is just good to know, is what's called the law of balance, which is actually the predominant law of the universe. Remember, many times as you are moving up the levels, the so-called storm is clearing out some of the old that will no longer serve you as you move on to this new frequency. And it has to fall away for a new level of balance to maintain, right? So these things have to be removed because you're moving to a different place. If these things stayed, it wouldn't be balanced with the new person you're showing up as. Now, to explain the law of balance, I'm going to play you another clip where I explain it really well how this works, but this is operating in your life all of the time and why it's so crucial to embrace the bends, the storm, to see things as opportunities, situations, or challenges, etc. So I'll play that for you now. Life is always trying to maintain balance and harmony, but again, maybe not in the ways that you think, because you might think, well, how can that be the case? How can it, especially with that word harmony, always be wanting to maintain harmony? Because I look out at the world and all these atrocities are happening that I'm looking at, and this thing happened to me, etc., etc. And what it's really doing is maintaining balance and harmony on all three planes of existence, and it means balance and harmony between the spiritual, mental, and physical planes planes, and I'll explain what that means. And just if you are unaware, as a human being, as a spiritual being in a human body, if you want to put it in that way, you have 3 planes of existence that you are operating on at all times. You have the physical one, which most people are down with. They understand, oh, I'm in a physical body, I'm in this physical world, and some people cut themselves off there. They're like, well, that's all I am. I'm just physical. There's only the physical world and my 5 senses, etc. Then there's the mental plane of existence, and some people, a lot more people than what we're going to go over on the 3rd plane of existence, but they'll buy into the mental one, like, oh, I have thoughts, I can picture things in this thing I have called a mind. Okay, so there's a mental plane of existence where I have thoughts, I can envision things, etc. And we also have a spiritual plane of existence. This is what connects us to that which we actually are, to divinity, if you want to say it that way, or source, or the all. Essentially, this is also the energetic realm. This is the emotional realm, energy in motion. And as a human, you are operating from all 3 of these planes at the same time simultaneously. So you're not just moving in the physical plane and moving through time and space, but you are also doing things in the mental plane of existence through what you're thinking about and those projections you're sending out there. And as the Kabbalion and Hermetic wisdom would say, everything is mental, the all is mind. And you also have a spiritual plane of existence, which is energetic, vibration, frequency. And again, that connection to what we call source, or we can call it infinite intelligence, or we can call it the all. Some people call it God, whatever you want to call it. And the thing to understand is that all of these planes, they are not separate. They are not acting on their own away from each other. They're actually all in correspondence with each other. If you've ever heard the saying, as above, so below, and as below, so above, that's where this comes from. It's called the principle of cause and effect, and it happens on all 3 planes. And what that means is one thing happens on one plane, it will influence and affect the other planes of existence. They always line up eventually. They're in correspondence. Now, to just give you a very simple example of how this works, let's say you think thoughts of negativity a lot. That's whether consciously and unconsciously, probably unconsciously. But let's say you do what we call catastrophize, which means you think of the worst possible thing that could happen when you're focusing on something. Oh, I'm going to go do this, and what if I spill my coffee, and what if that person rejects me, etc., etc. So let's say you're doing that on the mental plane. Let's say, because of that, because you're thinking that way, on the spiritual plane, emotionally, you're feeling pretty terrible. You're not feeling great at all. And so the mental and emotional plane are in line there. And what's going to happen is you're going to get the effect of those causes on the physical plane. You'll notice that someone who complains all the time or thinks negatively all the time very rarely has positive things, what we consider positive things, happen to them. Rarely has amazing opportunities coming in. Rarely has like uplifting people in their life, etc., etc. Because there are people, for example, who will do the exact opposite. They will think positively, genuinely, heartfeltly, if that's a word, most of the time. They will feel good most of the time. Doesn't mean they always do, but most of the time they've trained themselves to do that authentically and genuinely. And you see this kind of person who has all this abundance in their life and all this love. It doesn't mean harmony in the sense of like everything's so peaceful and everything. That's not what we're talking about. That's not what that means in this context. Unless, of course, you are thinking that way, feeling that way, and then it will harmonize in that way on your physical. But when we're saying balance and harmony, that's what we mean. Harmony, in this case, isn't necessarily positive. It just will match up and correspond to what you're doing on these other planes of existence. Outer world, which represents your physical, follows the inner world. The spiritual and mental planes of existence represent the inner world. This is your thoughts. These are your visualizations, your imaginings, things of that, your imagination, which is such a powerful tool, your intention, your attention, where you put that on what you put that in your mind's eye, your emotions, energy in motion, what you're entertaining most of the time. The outer world is going to start following that. What do you think about and what do you feel most of the time? That is what's going to create a balance of either what we call positive or negative on the physical plane. A harmony of whatever, harmonizing with positive stuff or negative stuff. And again, I'm using these very general terms where we can insert many different things on that spectrum, but just to keep it simple, it will either harmonize and balance with the positive stuff that you've been maintaining in the inner world, or if it's negative stuff, it'll do the same. It doesn't care which. Finally, I want to move on to one more example, which is simply called the bends in the river. And I've mentioned a bit about this, but why embracing and even celebrating the bends in the river is so valuable and will help you move up the grades so much more quickly, or so much more quick. Because when you embrace the bends and even celebrate the bends in the river of life, your life begins to transform faster than you can imagine. You start going from one grade to the next at record speed. So here's me again explaining how this works. Now next, it's not just letting go, but embracing the bends in the river. And I can make a whole video on this, and I probably will, but I'm going to give you essentially the cliff notes of what this means. And again, this is so crucial and what just causes so many people to get stuck or not progress. And so you've heard this analogy before from me if you've been here for a little bit, but let's say you're on the river of life and you're kind of flowing with the river. Well, it's very easy to allow life and yourself to co-create and kind of continually move to this channel and what's next for you when there's a strait in the river and it's calm and you're just kind of floating away very kind of nicely and calmly, and you feel good, and you kind of look up and you see everything in front of you. You can see what's coming up. You can see everything that's there. But what happens when you inevitably get to what's called a bend in the river? And every river is like that. You know, life is non-linear, meaning you're always going to have a bend. Now, the bend is more scary because you don't know what's on the other side of that bend. There might be rapids, maybe the water's speeding up, there's some challenges coming up, and you don't know what's on the other side of the bend. It was lovely when you were just on the straight and everything was known and you could see how everything was unfolding and you had all the information and it was relaxing and you felt good, but here comes this bend in the river. Now, this is when most people start to panic because life is leading them to the unknown. And when you're co-creating with life, when you're operating at higher levels, you embrace the unknown because that's the part that's the universe's job in the co-creative process, and manifesting. That's the world unseen, where you don't know the how things are going to happen, and you're not meant to. But most people panic. And so when the bend comes, people try and swim back to the straight. You know, they try and get out of the river, they resist, they hold on, and they will not go through that bend. But here's the problem. When you're on the river of life, to move further down the river, to move further up on those channels, to move more in who you need to become, you have to go through the bend, or else you won't progress through the river. And this really comes down to also letting go of control. There's many things we cannot control. However, we can control our response to these bends. You know, when we think of them as a big scary monster, of course we're going to resist it and not want to do it, even though the bend, I promise you, is very loving. It's going to help you grow. It's going to show you things you need to see. It's going to take you on that quantum leap that's the next thing to go if you're ready to go on it. And here's the thing, it's your head that is talking you out from going around that bend, from embracing that challenge, from even getting excited about that challenge and that bend, you know, celebrating the bends in your life, because once you learn this stuff, you understand the power in that. But guess what? You don't manifest from your head. Your head only operates from the known. Manifestation, if you knew how to manifest the things that you wanted that are currently not in your life, then you would do it. If you knew from your head how to do that, then you would do it, but your head has no clue. This is when we invite in the loving unknown. And the loving unknown is on the other side of that challenge and the other side of that bend that life has naturally brought to you because you need to go through it to get to where you say you want to go. And so if you truly want to demonstrate that the universe has your back, you live in a friendly universe, you are guided, then I would invite you to lovingly go through the bend. And yes, it can be scary. And I'm not saying there won't be fear. I still have fear when bends come up. But I really bring courage to the situation, knowing I'm guided, knowing I am protected, knowing that life is not going to bring me anything I cannot handle. And also it's bringing these things to me for growth, so I can continually become who I need to become, to do what I want to do in my life, to serve my purpose, to serve my mission. Now, if you want help with this and you want to be able to create your reality in the fastest, most effective way possible, you can check out our reality creation program, which I will link down below, where you can learn a little more about it, see the results that other people are getting, and see if it's a right fit for you. Again, this is going to be weekly coaching with an elevated group of peers, so it's one of the best ways and the most effective ways to make sure you're getting this and creating the life you want for yourself. Again, to see if it's for you, just click the first link down below to learn more. So I'm going to give you a couple other things that you can look at and work on in order to help you with all of this. And the first thing is to have more loyalty to the vision than the current physical circumstances. You see, when you have a direction, a North Star, a vision that you are moving towards, even when things start to kick up, if you simply focus in on the vision, that inner world vision that you have, it'll be a lot easier to embrace the bends and the challenges that come through. We have to remember that the inner world is actually more real than the outer world, and the outer world follows the inner. And so if a storm is being kicked up, that we know now is simply feedback, and it's just there to help you. If you then give more loyalty to the vision, you don't react, you really keep in mind that vision that you're moving towards, that life is actually trying to help you towards, and this chaos is most likely clearing out or something else to help you be able to live now on that frequency. If you keep your loyalty in the vision, things in the outer will begin to change and take on a coherence that's more aligned to that vision you are staying focused on. So I always love to remind myself of that, to have more loyalty to the vision than the current physical circumstances. And so if I find myself getting hooked into some kind of chaos or a bend in the river or whatever else, it helps to calm me down and to remember this idea. Now, one thing that's really going to help you is what's called amalgams in being able to embrace the bends in the river. Now, an amalgam is something that you can say, a mantra, or something that really helps to reduce the harshness of the outer world kicking up. This is something like, I know something positively amazing is unfolding for me now, or I live in a friendly universe. There's many others that I can give you. I'll put some that come on screen, and you can choose some that resonate with you to continually use when things seem to be kicking up. And what they do is help you remind yourself of these truths, and again, keep your focus more on the vision than the physical circumstances, to keep your awareness on what's creating all this, again, the inner world, rather than what's kicking up at this very moment, right? It helps to keep you centered and grounded. And so what I recommend is choosing a few of those amalgams, trying them out when you find that you're getting hooked, or you find that you're reacting, or you find that you're giving more importance to the physical circumstances rather than giving more focus to the inner world. One other thing I'll give you is this video where you'll learn even more about how to influence your reality and really how to manipulate it in ways that actually serve you. So it'll be a great follow-up to this video that I recommend you go watch over here.